What are some ways that you personally deal with some of those intrusive thoughts?
Well, the first thing is not being avoidant. I approach them with a lot of curiosity.
There's so many paths before me. I'm so young. I've got everything ahead of me. And it's like, what do I do?
I think it's more of a problem to feel like you can't shift and pivot.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking part in this immersive listening experience. A meaningful existence is a moving target that, no matter how close, will always be out of reach. We hope this message finds you with an outstretched hand. As we attempt to uncover complex truths, remember, life's toughest questions can be answered if we all just focus on one thing: being good people.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This week's episode, I was joined again by Athan Schindler. He is a longtime reoccurring guest on Good People, and my conversation with him today was awesome. In today's episode, expect to learn how feeling burnt out isn't what you think, and the importance of self-work and finding your purpose. If you guys are on YouTube, before the show begins, please head on down and like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on our notifications so you don't miss our weekly uploads. When you interact with our channel, it really helps us grow this thing, and we appreciate it and you. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
It is another Athan out of the back pocket call to have a conversation on the show.
Man, I do not mind. I love these conversations, and I always get a lot out of them. So I appreciate that we keep doing them.
I have a question about that. Do you like having the conversation because you and I get to do it, and it's like, is it the guest aspect of it, or is it the act of speaking into the microphone that is fun and exciting for you?
I think it's a combination. Like, obviously you and I are friends, so this is a great way for us to catch up and share some time together. And also I love the discourse, any kind of discourse, one of my favorite things is just having a great conversation. And so yeah, for me, it's a little bit of both. It really checks a lot of boxes for me in my life. So it's something I never turn down the opportunity to do one of these. So.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that I can, at least I hope, provide that for you. But actually, that made me think, did you see recently Alex Hormozy posted some announcement that he's shifting all of his content and he's just doing like long form style stuff? He literally posted a video of him. I think he literally just rolled out of bed. He had like a gravelly Batman morning voice and his hair was all messed up. And there was a lens flare coming in from the fluorescent light of his apartment. He was just talking about something in business and life. And I've been talking to a lot of people on the show. I think we actually talked about it when you were on. I think in December was the last time you were on. This like content creator revolution thing.
Yeah.
And everybody's always saying the authentic storytellers will separate themselves from these people who are trying to be a quote unquote influencer. And I feel... I don't know what I feel about that. It's cool that I think a lot of people are recognizing, it seems, that long form style content where, we're just kind of two buddies shooting the shit. And every once in a while, a little nugget of golden information might pop up out of it is the way that we should be consuming content. And it's the way that I've consumed content for years, and I get a ton of value out of it. So it's cool and it's hopeful, I think, for me as somebody who's trying to do this. That seems to be the way things are going.
Yeah, I like that a lot too, because the things that stress me out about doing this, and the reason why I've been very inconsistent, is where I felt like the industry is kind of, there's a bit of like polishing and like a formality to it and a structure. And I think the best content I've put out there, and certainly if you look at like clicks and watches and all that other stuff, is really just me babbling on in long form, talking about something that I really care about. And that seems to be what people are kind of gravitating towards anyway. So that encourages me, because that's where my instincts and intuition take me to. Let me just put this out here. I have something to say. I'm not trying to be an influencer in any way, but I have something I want to give. And this makes it really easy for me to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to that. Like, it's just with the intention of just giving, and it doesn't matter what you get out of it. like the business climate, and you're more in tune with this than me because you literally own a business and you're managing a lot of that stuff every single day. And I'm sure there's lots of fires to put out and you're getting pulled in every which direction that I don't necessarily see. But just from like an outside point of view, um, building a business online, being a coach, all of this stuff to me is just, I don't know. It's abhorrent now to me where I'm like, oh, I don't want anything to do with that. And obviously at some level, I hope that the show does well and and I have some financial stress in my life because I'm not at a certain dollar amount. And if I want to have a family, I'm going to have to work a little bit harder at this thing. Right. And I hope that the show can provide that for me. But at a very base level, just having these conversations and sharing it with the intention of, hey, I might tell a good story here or there, or I might have a good conversation. I'm going to learn something. Hopefully I can teach the guests something. And anybody listening in hopefully feels like they have a seat in the conversation. Maybe they can't contribute, but they're definitely listening in and can pull the same thing out of it. So I think that that's an awesome, almost why behind what it is that we're trying to accomplish. It's really just to share some of the shit that we've been through.
Yeah. I see that for sure. And the ones, again, the folks that I follow, like you can pick up on the people who are maybe, they might not be doing it for the right reasons, or at least it's not coming across appropriately. And then the folks who are really blowing up, like Chris Williams, with Modern Wisdom or something like that, like they really started like you did. He was just personal growth. Like I'm trying to learn something. I'm trying to put something out there into the world while I'm learning it in this type of format. And then people really see the sincerity around that and tune in and keep following. And then it grows and then you get better at it. And I really do think there's some possibility there.
Yeah. One of the challenges that I'm facing with it is that because I guess I consume content in the not just personal growth space, but the business space, how to grow a business, how to grow a podcast. I'm trying to learn these things. I get caught up sometimes in my own, like, oh, I'm putting out really polished podcast clips, 2 or 3 of them every week for the show. And then I'm like, I don't want to match that with some just kind of like thrown together video of me doing like snatches and clean and jerks in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it ends up if I don't do that, I'm only posting 2 or 3 times a week, and then the consistency of that isn't there. And so I think that you're onto something, and maybe I need to work on this myself a little bit more when it comes to that. It's just like putting shit on Instagram. Nobody cares. Like everybody just sees it. Most people just see it and skip past it anyway. So I think just putting up the things that you're doing, and on top of that, to add another layer, because I'm in the quote unquote self-improvement space, it's like, what does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think it means reading and writing and preparedness, which includes getting in physical condition, doing jujitsu. I just took a pistol course for the first time a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
That was awesome. Like, dude, I'm going to get into shooting because it was awesome. I'm doing another advanced pistol course in a couple weeks. And anyways, like I'm doing all of these things. And in my brain, it's like, I don't have a medium to share it, but I do. And even though it's all super broad and maybe seem kind of random, it's all centered on this idea of improving oneself, leading and living a better life, helping other people, etc.
Yeah, I think people ultimately are buying into you. I just saw I'm in a group which you're aware of, the Two Brain Tinker group, and there was just we just did this little workshop on storytelling, branding, your personal brand, your business's brand, and stuff like that. And what I'm really learning is that what people are really tuning into, and what people are really, especially with your social media and this type of content like a podcast, is that they kind of get bought into you. As Hormozy's a good example. You already mentioned, like, he's just an interesting character, right? Like he's a fascinating person, and people kind of just want to tune in to see what is Hormozy doing, and I think you're onto something there with your feed. If you are just kind of, because when you talk about self-improvement, what people really say is like, okay, maybe this guy has a couple things figured out that I don't. And you can really give them like snippets and clips of, well, what do you have figured out? And what are you doing well? And what are you struggling with at the same time? And then people are like, oh, okay. Like we all start improving by just learning from each other. So I personally, that's my approach to it too. I don't know that anyone really follows me per se, but like that's how I'm approaching it.
Yeah. On that note too, I understand you just hired a social media coach.
Yeah.
What was the purpose behind that?
It goes back to what we kind of said a couple minutes ago. I have something I want to give. I have something I want to say. I get hung up. I get really bogged down emotionally with the output of the stuff, the information. And I figured I'm a big believer in who, not how. And if I can get the right who involved in my process, then this will go a little better. I do better with accountability. I think all coaches need coaches, and so I need the structure and the accountability and someone who's not emotionally attached to whatever I'm doing to just like help me to figure it out. So, but ultimately, I am trying to build a personal brand because I have something that I want to give. And I think that if I'm going to give it at the highest level, I need to figure out a way to, like you mentioned, make money doing it, providing value to people. And I need to learn how to do that better.
Mm. My question is really centered around the idea of coming up with new iterations of yourself. I think something that you and I have in common is that we both want to live meaningful lives at some level. And to me, I don't really care what that looks like. I just want to feel, we talked a lot about purpose in the past on the show, finding your purpose. You help people find their purpose, etc. And I always feel like for me, I've never been able to stick to something for an incredibly long period of time, whether it's completely shifting gears and focusing on something new, or taking a big step in whatever field that I'm currently in. So I'm kind of going through something like that right now with fitness, where it's like I get so much value and fulfillment rather out of coaching people every single day. But I recognize that a big shortcoming of mine is like the business and financial side of running a gym, being a coach. Like I'm very aware, and I think this was onset because I'm getting married later this year, that in order for me to be successful in this industry, I'm going to have to continue to step it up in that regard in one way or another. And you and I both know there's a tons of different ways to do that. But that's become a very clear focus for me is, okay, my next step is learning how to make be more financially successful in this world, whether it's shifting gears and looking at a different avenue in this space, whether it's maybe continuing to do what I'm doing but do it at a higher level, etc. I noticed that trend with you too. How often do you feel like you're coming up with these new iterations, new goals for yourself?
Probably 10 years ago, I did it a lot more. I was really constantly innovating myself over and over. And at the time, it probably from the outsider and even from me, it did seem like these major like leaps and like major shifts. But as I've now where I'm at now, looking back, there's a common thread. There are themes that, so I'm not like, it's not a complete just abandonment of one version of me and then jumping into a completely different version. Like I'm still me. And I think, Gary Vee posted something the other day that really hit me. That he said something like, "You're not lost. You're just early in the process."
I was going to bring that up next because I think I liked your story. You reshared it.
Yeah,
that like really hit home with me at this current point in my life, where I feel like I don't know. There's so many paths before me. I'm so young. I've got everything ahead of me, and it's like, what do I do? And it's not that I'm lost. It's just that as time passes, those paths will become more narrow.
Yeah, I think it's more of a problem to feel like you can't shift and pivot than it is to continue to shift and pivot. And, we get so locked into, this is something I'm writing a lot about right now. And people get so locked up into their identities, like who they are or who they have been, that they don't feel safe and comfortable, being another way. And I'm at least glad that I don't have that problem. You see so many people and I think that's where like discontent, mediocrity, people who become like resentful and bitter towards the end of their lives because they didn't take the chance, the risks. And your original question was like, how often do I feel like I need to do that? I do it when I do it when I feel like I need to. When my spirit, my soul is telling me like, you need a change, you got to do something different. I I believe in my own inner wisdom, and I follow it.
Hmm. When it comes to your desire to build this personal brand, share more of the inner workings of your mind and self and knowledge and experience, do you feel like that's just sort of another iteration of what you're doing now every day in your gym, or all of the other businesses that you have? That's like at the core of it, you're really just helping people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Right. It's new tools, new methods. I've got this toolbox of tools that I'm trying to, ultimately we're solving problems. I think what it really comes down to is we all have challenges and problems. And just like a home improvement project, sometimes you need a hammer, sometimes you need a screwdriver, sometimes you need a drill. And I'm just trying to become more skilled with different tools to solve the same. We have a finite range of problems and challenges as human beings, and I'm just trying to find better and more effective ways to help people solve those problems. Starting with me, I'm my own project. I'm probably the one that I work on the most, and then when I learn something for myself, then I love sharing that with other people.
In this line of thinking, I think the topic of burnout becomes something that's kind of pertinent, and something that I, again, am experiencing. I don't even quite know how to pin down the turmoil that I'm feeling, because I'm still very focused and driven and comfortable with my work every day, with the podcast, but there just feels like, honestly, you know what it is I took this pistol course and I realized that I like way more things than I thought. And I'm going like, man, what else can I explore that I think I should? What other ways can I try to help people? I thought about doing some like volunteer firefighting every once in a while, because I think that, first responders are people that I've always admired. And I'm like, I can do that. Like, I'm in great shape. I should use my fitness. And so for me, I have a hard time sometimes separating that internal wisdom knowledge. I know that I need to step it up, add a thing on the side, do whatever, in the feelings of burnout. Like, those two things are obviously two different things. I'm curious what your perspective on that is. Is that easy for you to identify? If so, how would you tell the difference?
Yeah. Yeah. Burnout is a really tricky topic. When I was a social worker, it was a major, there was a lot of discourse. Social workers burn out all the time, or that's what the rhetoric says, and I have certainly in my lifetime many times gotten to a point where I have felt kind of like, I like to call it like, I've crashed. I've crashed and burned. I don't know that, like, burnout maybe be something different, where, you've given so much of yourself and you've not not replenished yourself, not rejuvenated yourself enough. And so to me, it's like I'm burnout. If I were trying to define it is like, I know my mission. I know where I'm supposed to be going. And I've been so hard charging and not doing the things that keep me in the fight, that I eventually just kind of like fall on my face. And like, now I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore because this is too hard. I have experienced that, being a business owner and an entrepreneur, it's just part of it. And not everybody's built for that, because you have so many variables at play that you're dealing with, that it is really hard. And there's an unpredictable nature of it. So there's this kind of like, screw this, I'm done thought that comes up often. And I think what I'm learning through all that is like, yeah, you can avoid getting to that point if you learn some things about your personality type, your character type, and you take some preventive measures to get there. What you're saying sounds different to me. Excuse me. Sounds a little different to me. it's not, doesn't sound like burnout. It sounds like, it's totally okay to say like, hey, I've been doing this and maybe I want to do something different now. That's not burnout. That's growth. Pivoting. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. It feels like a different topic to me.
I see. Yeah. And I think I was actually thinking about this in the shower the other day. Like I was just mulling over what my internal feelings have been. And I think this is a Hormozy thing, but he said on a podcast sometime where he was like, owning a business or starting a project. I always draw on this podcast because, we're a year into this thing, but that's still obviously very early on. He always says like the beginning is the hardest part. And one of the reasons why it's the hardest part is because your output for your return is almost an inverse ratio of what you want it to be one day. Ideally I do one task and I get 10x, 20x result from that one thing, right? But when you're starting anything, business, a fitness journey, another way to put it is your short-term risk increases pretty exponentially when you start, right? And your output is so high and your return is so low that you can often have those feelings, burnout or just, I'm doing all of this and I'm not getting anything out of it. And he said the dialogue that he would have in his head when he was starting his gym or sleeping on the floor or whatever it was he would look around and he'd be like, I need help. I don't know what to do. And he would see that there was nobody standing by him and he would go like, fuck, like it's me again. I have to do it. Right. And I think that you're on to something there. I just reposted this on Threads. I said this to you last time you were on the show. This is probably the most profound quote that I ever came up with. But it is that the more things you accomplish, the more that you realize that you are no better than anybody else. So confidence, what it is acceptance. It's not capability. And I think that has been a homing thought for me as of late, which is I am doing really difficult work right now. These feelings of disquiet or discontent or effort are a result of the challenges that I'm facing. It's okay. Keep going, and when you're kind of faced with those two choices, it's like I quit and I'm back where I was to some level without a podcast or without a job or whatever. Or I keep going or pivot, to use those words. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with changing your circumstances, but really the only thing it comes down to when you have good character is choosing to continue on your path or direct that same energy towards something else that may ultimately fulfill you.
Yeah, I think that's why it's, not to sound like a broken record, but you kind of have to know your purpose. You have to have some sort of like sense of purpose, because the rewards may not, the external rewards are not always going to be there, and it's going to suck, and you're going to be putting in a lot of work. And I think that if you're not really aware of and staying tuned into why you're doing it, and hopefully it's for something, because, money, things, social status, all that shit is just, it's fleeting, and it's also ultimately not that rewarding. When you get it, you're like, oh, okay, well, this didn't fill a hole in my heart, so I think that's the big part of all of it, because then you don't really mind shifting, changing, doing some things differently when you're like, no, this is just this is another part of the mission. The mission is always the mission. We're just kind of approaching it in different ways.
I see. What are some ways that you personally deal with some of those internal intrusive thoughts?
Well, the first thing is not being avoidant of it for me. When those things bubble up for me, I approach them with a lot of curiosity. I have it's something that may be intrusive, and I go to therapy to deal with shit that happened to me when I was a kid, and that that wounded inner child pops up for me a lot. And sometimes I have to, you have to kind of just sit with that, and talk and look at it face to face and approach it with curiosity without getting so emotionally distraught about it. So that's a big part of it, is just kind of having a level of awareness of, anything that's coming up for you or me negatively isn't you. It's how your brain works and how we've developed our psyche and the psychological aspects of ourselves. And so I don't have to get so emotional. I don't have to get so caught up and tied into how that's coming up for me. So that's one big part of it, is just kind of confronting it, looking at it, asking questions about it. The other part is just like I was talking earlier, you got to do preventive maintenance, right? This meat suit that we live in, this vehicle that we drive every day to get to the destination that we're going, needs maintenance. And, so I know really quickly when I'm not taking care of myself, when I'm having these like really negative thoughts, or I'm like, I had one recently, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had this just like shitty attitude, just like, fuck this, fuck everyone. Like this, like kind of what you're talking about. Like I'm working my ass off, and I'm not seeing. I don't even know why I'm doing this right now. It became really clear to me, like, oh yeah, well that's because I've not taken a day off in, I don't know, 3 months, and all this other stuff. I'm like, well, of course I'm feeling like this. So I have to like always go back to, fitness is always a thing for me, but sometimes I just mail it in. And it's like, am I really, taking this seriously? Am I mailing it in on my meditation? Am I mailing it in on my journaling? Am I taking time off? I know my personality type needs a lot of, I can work really hard, but I also need to kind of like rest really hard too. So, that just comes with time. I've learned that this is over a period of, well, I'm 40, I'll be 47 in August, like, it's just a lot of like crashing and burning over the years that I've had to do, and have a growth mindset and look at those moments and say, okay, well, what could I have done differently? And just picking up tools, picking up tricks, and all that stuff along the way.
Do you find that the ways that you respond to these, moments of turmoil are the same? Because I'm the same. When I'm in a bad spot, I feel like everybody owes me something. I'm like, do you guys not realize all that I'm doing for you? Like I'm getting up early and I'm getting my workout. Like even selfishly, the things that I do I'm reading every morning. Like I'm working hard here, and like I come up with these workouts for you, and I'm taking you through it. And like you're gonna come in with this negative attitude.
Yeah.
Obviously, those things it's like a pretty narcissistic thing to think and feel, right? But that's probably the most. It's like an agitation or an anger for me. Is it the same with you? Are there reoccurring, emotions that are associated with that?
Yeah, for me, it's like a level of kind of what you're talking about. And I do think different personality types, different types of people experience a slight different flavor of this. But for me personally, it's a bitterness, it's a resentment. And a lot of times when I do examine that and I get curious about it, it's not what the other people are doing, because, nothing changes. Everybody's kind of pretty self-centered, and they're just trying to do the best they can to get their own needs met. It's when I get bitter and resentful, it's when I haven't been putting myself, when I always notice it when I've been people pleasing. I get real bitter and resentful, and that's not anyone else's fault. It's like I kept giving and giving. I didn't draw any lines or boundaries, and like now I'm a little bitter and resentful about that. So that is for sure a theme for me.
Something that I think a lot about, I did this either this past weekend or the previous one. I've got a cabin. It's like an hour from where I live. My grandfather built it in 1979 with his friends. I've been going there my whole life, and there's no cell service there. There's always a job. Like literally every single time that I've gone to my cabin, it has been not to unwind. It has been, we're going to do this job. And it's awesome. I love it. It's got a water pump that you have to, hand pump the water. Cool. And all of the trees have been falling for years. We've always got to cut up a tree, right? And I went up there just for the afternoon. I did a little bit of target practice after I had done my pistol course, and I just chopped wood. Like this is so cliche and so like man bravado shit that I'm talking about right now, but just like going there and shooting my gun and pumping some water and chopping wood. When I left, I was like, it created space where, my fiance was inside, she was reading, hanging out with our dog, and I was just by myself in nature, sweating. And I wasn't avoiding anything by any means. I was actually, letting some of these thoughts and feelings have space in my brain, and I was able to process them. And I kind of left with a bit of an understanding that, like, oh yeah, maybe these things are just, we like to blame emotions and we like to make them bad or good. And it's very much like the tool analogy that we used earlier, where it's like, why is this anger and frustration coming up? Oh, it's because I haven't done anything like this for myself in a while, and I need to do more. My personality is so similar to yours, where I it's kind of horrible to say this because it feels kind of like I'm imprisoned by my own consciousness, but I have these like profound ideas that I need to act on, and I'm working so righteously. And then I work really hard, and then I fall back to this sort of like romantic, oh, I need to rest and recover type of thing. But I'm beginning to realize this is just the way that I am. And if I'm more in tune with that, and I can sort of predict and calculate and be ready for when stuff like that comes up, I can probably handle these things a bit better. And hopefully it doesn't affect the people around me as much.
Yeah, I think it's there's a cyclical nature to all, well, to nature, right? And you as a human being, we are part of nature. We are a natural being. And so it's like the weather. It's like, you don't get mad when winter comes around, do you? Like, it's coming. It's just
I do get a little pissed.
Yeah. Well, where you live, I could see that. It's not so bad here. But it's like when you've spent enough when you've had enough seasons and you have enough years of these seasons, you don't get mad about it anymore. You just know this is the way things are. And there's a level of acceptance to it that I think, the thing about you, I think when I think about you is like, you are so beyond your years. You are in actual years young, but in terms of like when you think about, strength and conditioning, even your training age is very high, because you've been doing the work and you've not been putting it off and you've been facing it. So there's levels of frustration of you're early in your process, and that's not even to say because of your age, but I know people my age who are just now starting to do this work. And yeah, it's a little uncomfortable. It's a little frustrating, when these things keep popping up and now you're more aware of it, So I think when I hear you talk about that, like the fact that you went to your cabin, you chopped wood, you shot your guns, and you did some work and you felt better after that. I mean, that's a learning phase. It's like, oh, okay. So rather than me do this in a reaction, maybe I can do this proactively. I can schedule this before I start feeling down and shitty, and I'm saying this out loud, but I know this, that I should be doing this better for myself too, but I don't do it as well as I should. So.
Yeah. There's a great Mark Twain quote. It is, the two most important days in a man's life are the day he's born and the day he finds out why. And perhaps you can interrogate this idea with me. I thought about it a while ago, and I was thinking about it more today. I actually wrote about it today. But I feel like every human being's default setting, in terms of like the three pillars of self, I guess you could say. By the way, I know we're not clinicians here. We're clinical psychologists. So we were just a couple knuckle draggers that like to work out. We're talking about philosophy, but body, mind, spirit. I think the default setting of the human is the body leads the mind, leads the spirit. We're born into this world, and that's a survival thing. Like get clothes, get food, get water. Once you're there, okay, now we can start using our brain a little bit. What do we need to be mentally well? Entertainment, relationships. Okay, can we improve the standard of our living? And spirit is sort of the last thing. That's why I think historically, all of these golden age eras where the greatest thinkers of our time have emerged, philosophers, Socrates, Marcus Aurelius, it's because the world is at a time of peace. Or in Roman times, they owned so much of the world that, that they were prosperous in that way, right? And I think in today's day and age, we're living in such a world of abundance, at least in the Western world. I obviously know there are parts of the world that are not like this at all. Um, but for the modern American, even people who are low income, right, are living, which doesn't justify it by any means, is at a point where we have a lot of these things in abundance. We can go to the grocery store and get whatever sustenance we need. I can just, go into any store and buy clothes. I make a monthly income that allows me to pretty much buy anything that I want. I can afford gas to drive around and see any part of the world that I'd like to. And so I think what's happened is, with this default setting that we're living with, body, mind, spirit, because of the world of abundance that we live under, if you aren't able to correct that, we end up living in this world of indulgence where, okay, I haven't really ever thought about my existence in the world, so we'll overindulge on food. I won't have a good fitness routine. I won't have any good mental practices that keep my mind in check. And I think when people, especially in the self-improvement space, talk about being led by your values, being led by your self-belief, and it's sort of this elusive thing that nobody can really seem to pin down. You get that from religion, obviously. What it is we need to flip that on its head, where we start with the spirit. With the spirit, it will lead the mind, and then the mind will lead the body. And I think it doesn't matter if you follow a religious practice or if you just like journal about your values on a given day. But if you can get to the point where you take a step back from this indulgence behavior that we all seem to be living underneath, and you can sit with what's inside, look up at the stars, look at the beautiful mountains and the lush green grass of the plain, and observe that, and read poetry, do whatever, do these high level, high thinking tasks first and establish that as our baseline. What begins to happen is it starts to shape your mind into thinking positive thoughts, putting you in a proper place in the world, which allows you to kill your ego, makes you understand what it is that you have to accomplish, which that will allow your body to actually go and do the work, the discipline of showing up every single day, to work out or eat whatever, and go to work on time, be an upstanding human being, etc. And so I think that is a very important perspective that I've come to for myself, is that my body and my mind don't always know what's best for me. But if I can fall back on these values and this idea that I want to be good and achieve good things for myself so that I can help other people and make the world a better place, and use that as the compass, the spirit is the compass, the mind is sort of the captain, and then the body is the actual vessel that we navigate it with, the ship. I think that would get us to a place where everybody is living with these values that you and I talk about so much on the show.
Yeah, I think you nailed it for me. I call this being self-led, self with a capital S, like the self, meaning who you really are, your soul, your spirit. I don't profess to really understand, I'm no spiritual guru or anything, but I know that there is a me behind my body and my brain that cries out. I mean, it really, when it's not in the driver's seat, that's when I'm feeling depressed. That's when I'm having problems in my life. That's when I'm having issues. And I think that your brain, we often think our thoughts are us, which they're not. Your brain is just a computer that repeats programs, and whatever it picked up on a podcast like this, or a parent said to them when they were a kid, it literally just on repeat runs these programs, right? And it's not who you are. And then you nailed it with your body. It's literally the vehicle. It's your car. Like if you're going on a vacation to Miami and you're going to drive there, you hop in your car and it gets you there, but it's not you. Right. So, I think about that a lot. I do think we have the luxury of getting, we live in a society where we can kind of think about that. Like if there was a civil war in my country, and I was like just trying to like not get killed every day, it might not be a lot of time, or maybe it would be, maybe it does flip everything on its head, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm dealing with death every day. Maybe I should get my spirit and soul involved. I don't know, but I agree with you 100% that people have it backwards. It's why I fired many personal training clients over the years because they were just so much about the body that
Mm.
I couldn't handle it. I can't work with somebody whose only goal is body fat percentage or whatever else. I'm a performance coach, and there always has to be a so that. I want my body to be the healthiest it can so that I can go do these other amazing things in my life. And I won't work with anyone who doesn't have a so that that I believe in, that I'm bought into. They might have a so that I don't care about, and I still won't work with them.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm full agreement. I think you nailed the description.
I've been working really hard this year to read a very diverse group of books. Science fiction, fantasy novels. I'm reading a couple existential books right now. Just finished 2 memoirs, like personal accounts of a black boy and growing up in America on food stamps. And it's actually an English professor of mine. I read his memoir. He's actually the first episode of this podcast. It's called Mothership. Anybody listening should check that out. But anyways, this morning, I've had a Bible on my coffee table for a long time. And I'm somebody who grew up going to church, sort of. And I don't really have like a religious bone in my body, like I've sought it with running ultra marathons and other things. And I very much take, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, I very much take a fake it till you make it sort of mentality when it comes to this stuff. Like I have a hard time buying into things. I'm a skeptic by nature. I've read some parts of the Bible before, obviously growing up and over the years, but to be quite frank with you, I didn't want to read Infinite Jest, which is this really like thick book by David Foster Wallace, because it was just like too heavy. So I was like, I'm going to pick up the Bible. And I started reading through John. I read somewhere or heard it on a podcast somewhere that it was an excellent place to start. But it's funny that we're talking about this because at some point, I don't remember exactly where, and again, I'm not the guy to be talking about the Bible right now, but he says something along the lines of flesh comes from flesh, spirit comes from the spirit, right? And what he's talking about is like our bodies come from our mothers and fathers, but our spirit is holy. It comes from God. And whether or not you actually believe in the Christian faith or you're a follower of Jesus or whatever, any of the other religions, I think that is a universal truth that you see everywhere you look in Buddhism, in Christianity. No matter where you look, there's this idea that what is inside you doesn't come from you. It comes from somewhere else, the stars, the universe, God, etc. And I think I know that to be true. And it's something that I do believe and I work at trying to uncover bit by bit. And I just think that having that separation in your mind between those two things is such a valid or such a helpful perspective to take when it comes to self-improvement, because there needs to be a bit of surrendering that happens when you're trying to improve oneself. And to bring it back to earth a little bit, like if you want to get in good shape, you have to understand that this thing is going to take time and it's going to take patience, and the body composition that you have in mind might not be the end result. You might not look like the people who you want to look like because you are you, and but it's just this meat vehicle. And if you can get it to a place of functioning well and being healthy for the purpose of engaging with this earth and life better, like that's the point. And I think that's what we're both talking about here.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful way of saying that, people think they want their bodies to look a certain way because it's going to solve a problem for them. And then if we can get to what that problem is and how that problem is blocking them from something else in their life, so again, it's like we misinterpret the speaking of the spirit. We tend to think like, it's like, oh, I'm feeling this this turmoil inside of me, and it must be because of this, and so I'm going to work on this for a little while. But almost never, and like you mentioned, it's like we don't know what we're being protected from. Like you might get to a certain percentage of body fat or whatever, and do all that work and do all that the investment of time and money to get there, and still feel like the same exact person that you feel like today. And, so sometimes you get protected from that, that process by just like, yeah, your body isn't designed for that. Your body is designed to get you to somewhere else. That's all the body is for, so yeah, I really like the way that you've kind of described that and the way that you've studied it.
Hmm. What kind of work do you think is left for you to accomplish in your life? I know we talked a lot about there's this through line of purpose of helping people and you and I kind of see the same thing. I don't know if I quite know how to pin it down, but it's this idea that I want to help people with their body, mind, and spirit, work on these things, interface with the world and whatever else is out there a little bit better, and try to uncover some of these things. But for you, you're working a lot on social media, growing a personal brand. What else do you feel like looking ahead that there is for you to accomplish?
That's it for me. I'm becoming more and more aware that my reason for being here is to be a guide, a coach, a mentor, someone who is able to sit with a person and help them to figure out a lot of the things that you and I are talking about today. And there are so many skills and abilities and things that it takes for someone to do that at a high level. And I think that's what's out there for me, is to kind of figure out, to have the experience myself, to put myself in situations where I'm going to have to be a toddler and learning how to walk and all those things, so that I can learn it and so that I can give it to other people. So it's what I love about business, really, is the process of doing activities that provide value and that people want to engage with, and ways to kind of like, make a living doing that, to get my needs met in the same way. And I see this in like a form of community. It's like we all provide value within a village. And so the village does really well when we're all kind of doing our part. And this is just kind of the part that I see myself doing. So I am so, maybe this is a problem. Maybe this is something I need to examine, but I am so strongly in tune to why I'm here and what I'm supposed to be doing that I can't even come off of the fact that I would be doing anything that isn't in line with helping people to optimize their meat wagon, their meat vehicle.
We're talking about butts now.
It's all part of it. Helping people to connect to other human beings in deep and meaningful ways, building community, building a village, giving of yourself so that you might receive, and we all, rise above, and the self-actualization piece, like, finding purpose, finding what your reason for being here for, and really feeling empowered to go out there and do that work, maybe when everything around you is throwing an obstacle in your way. So I just can't imagine doing anything different. And the reason why I'm doing the social media thing, and I'm kind of diving into, I'm actually leading into, and I haven't really talked a lot about this publicly, but it's not that I'm keeping it a secret. I'm just not ready to put it out there yet. But I really want to start a coaching business where I start working kind of one-on-one with people to do a lot of this same work that we're talking about, which is a little bit of a different spin than what I've done on the business side of things before.
Coaching business, like coaching coaches, or we're just talking about wellness as a whole outside of just strength and conditioning.
Coaching people who want to be, who are about something, like, who are about something, who have something that they want to give, and they just haven't quite figured it out yet. They've got some sort of, they're stuck in some area of being able to give, or maybe they just don't even know, they're just like completely stuck. And like, I know there's something else out there for me. I want to start coaching people to help figure that out. And of course, physical fitness is a part of that. It's the baseline foundation. And then it's like kind of figuring out your purpose in life, and like, how do we start getting you out there to accomplish those things?
That's interesting. I've actually been giving some thought to, like I mentioned earlier, there's this like professional aspect of what I do that I would like to step up a little bit. And I just don't quite know what that looks like. And I think one of the challenges of trying to do something like this in the modern day, and maybe you're experiencing something similar, is there's just so many vehicles to be able to do it. It's like, do I build a training app, or do I do word of mouth in my community, or is it like just calls like you and I are having right now, where I sit down with people and I come up with like Google spreadsheets with habit trackers, like what does it look like? And I guess, just speaking out loud, the answer is probably, it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
The people that you help are the people that you help. But it's always interesting, that question of like, if I do this, could I help more people? Or if I do this, will ultimately, I be more successful with the thing in this avenue? And I guess the answer is just, you have to just keep going, and you'll make the rendition until you land wherever it ends up working out, as long as you don't quit. Kind of what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I don't think it matters. I think the real challenge, the thing is just doing it, studying it. Did you get the result that you wanted? And if it didn't, if you realized that an online coaching business wasn't like getting you what you wanted it to be, then not being going all the way back to the first part of this conversation, just not being afraid to pivot. Don't get stuck. Don't get so married to one thought or one way of being that you're not willing to grow and expand and try new and different things. And at the end of the day, when you're laying on your deathbed, nobody's going to really like give a shit, like whether you did an online business or, word of mouth type of business or whatever. They're just going to, they're going to be talking about how you made them feel and about how you contributed to their life.
Mm. Are there any other areas of interest that you feel like you would be interested in exploring outside of this at all? Like random?
No, I don't even think about that, man. Like, honestly, like and again, this is something for me to think about and meditate on but I just feel so clear. I feel so clear that, I could see myself doing it in a lot of different ways. I bought a neighborhood grocery store a couple years ago here in my town, and that is kind of way outside. It seemingly from the outsider, it would seem like, oh, this is way outside of what Athan said his purpose was, but it wasn't for me, because I was like, look, food is medicine, food is health, food is wellness. It was a hub of our community. It was a gathering, it was a place of congregation in my town where people would go and hang out and shoot the shit and have a cup of coffee and all this other stuff, and it was self-actualization in my way. I'm a businessman. I wanted to learn, I'm trying to do that at the highest level. And I want to do that through the things that provide purpose for me. So I could see me getting into a couple different types of business types or something like that, but it won't ever to me be, I don't know, just like way outside of what I've already said is my purpose.
Mm. You won't like move to Alaska and start teaching lumberjacks how to chop wood or anything like that?
If I did, I would find a way to make it about health, community, and self-actualization. I would leverage it somehow,
Mm. You ever think about writing a book?
Yeah, I have thought about that. I think about that sometimes. Really, I think about it when other people mention it to me. I've had a pretty wild life. Like, like if, when I talk about my personal experiences from childhood all the way through my military experience, and even as a business owner, people are like, man, you've done so much stuff. Like, it'd be kind of a cool memoir or something. I've toyed with the idea. I am horrible at that. Would take a lot of execution and staying on task with things, and it's really not my strong suits. I'd need a lot of help with something like that.
Mm. I was just going to say, this is what I spend my time doing. I think about all of the things that my friends should be doing and not what I should be doing. But I just think you have a cool through line, with your 3 pillars. Yeah, like you mentioned, your childhood and your military experience and your business experience. I think it could come together pretty nicely into a story. And I think a lot of people would be interested in reading something like that. I know I would. And my dad would too. My dad loves you.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I love your dad too. I'd love to meet him on another one of these. Yeah, I mean, I think, well, I was going to what you just said. You spend a lot of time thinking about what your friends should do. That's a gift, man. Like, that's a gift to your friends, because sometimes you can see something way clearer than what your friend can, and you helping them. That's kind of what I wanted. That's it. When I talked about my coaching business, that's almost exactly it, right? Like, I want to get involved with somebody, and I know I have a vision for other people that I don't even have for myself. Like, but for whatever reason, I have this talent and skill being able to look at other people's abilities and really help them get clarity on it, So I think you're onto something.
Mm. Well, dude, this was another great conversation. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we wrap it up?
No, man, I'm super excited about your wedding that's coming towards the end of this year, and I'm so happy to hear. I'm recently gotten back into firearms and doing a little hunting and stuff like that. So I'm excited that you're kind of added. Man, there's just something beautiful about just being in nature, being a part of nature, and then the gun aspect is just there's something to be able to kind of handle yourself and defend yourself and all the skill that comes with that. So I'm just happy to excited to get caught up with you and all the amazing things you're up to.
Yeah, man. I have got to come to Bastrop, and we got to like shoot or something, or train jujitsu, or just do a man's week.
Dude,
gotta figure it out.
That would be great. I mean, I think there's probably like 3 or 4 guys I know that are kind of all in our similar kind of like headspace that if we could get them all together and do some stuff like that, it would be the most fun ever.
I'm down for that.
Okay.
We'll end up starting some weird like wild man business or something where we like coach people on how to shoot guns and
this is where great ideas come from, man. This is where the winners all are born, and just of doing something you just really love to do and you figure out a way to make money doing it.
Yeah, let's think about that and actually try to do something. That sounds fun.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, man. We'll leave it there. Before we sign out, where can people find more from the content and stuff like that you're putting out?
Yeah, Instagram's probably my best channel right now if people want to kind of get to know me a little better and engage with me. So that's at Athan Schindler. Anything else you want to know about me is linked there. So
right on. I'll be putting it in the show notes below.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of Good People. If you enjoyed my conversation with Athan, make sure you head on down to the show notes below so you can check out more of the content and information that he's putting out. Before we head out, if you are on YouTube, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on our notifications so you don't miss our weekly uploads. If, while you were listening, you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with someone you love, perhaps your grandma. We will see you next time.